Hey everyone, I'm Kunal Bajwa.
And I'm Lance Jordan.
We are two nerds who decided to start a podcast in 2020 due to the pandemic. No topic is necessarily off the table, and we'd like you to join us in hearing our thoughts on various topics, ranging from anime to Zeppelins. We have it all. Here we go.
Oh, it's the main event time?
It's the main event!
The main
event!
Alright, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Lance, you want to go first?
The assassin's going to step up to the plate first.
Faces or heels? Where are we going?
Whatever the crowd wants, man. Basically, a heel is a bad guy and a face is a good guy.
Should we end it with a good comeback with the faces?
Sure. Okay, sure. Alright. So, disclaimer. There's a few of my favorite wrestlers of all time in here. And then there's a few that I just appreciate for the fact that they were a good heel. They were a good face. Just wanted to throw that out there.
It's been thrown.
No, that disclaimer will work for me too, because that's how my lists work.
So at number 5, I have Brock Lesnar.
Ooh, all right.
And the reason I chose Brock at number 5 is because I think he plays the bully heel very well. I remember a story back in the day where, and this was like one of those moments that I thought was real. Like, they pulled a fan out of the crowd and was like, you're going to go have a match with Brock Lesnar. And Brock's having a match with the kid. Find out he doesn't have a fucking leg. And Brock, Brock beats the shit out of him. And then, like, they kept running that story, like, a couple weeks where it was like, we're going to give this kid a contract. You're going to have another match with Brock. And I'm like,
please stop.
Please stop. Yeah, there was a point where, like, Brock's beating him around the arena. He's bloody. He's pushing him downstairs and all that. I was like, what the fuck? This dude is a piece of shit. And so I think Brock definitely has that heel ability. And then, like, in recent years, it's been more that he's just been so fucking unstoppable. And it's like, you know that he's not really in wrestling because he loves it. It's more about money.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if he doesn't love it.
That's the storyline they're running, that he's there for a paycheck.
Yeah.
And you can kind of sense it, though, because he has, like, jumped back and forth between the UFC and WWE. So, for me, that put Brock at number 5. His storytelling ability isn't as strong as the other guys on this list. So.
But also, I will say that Paul Heyman.
Yeah, Paul Heyman can tell the story for Brock.
Oh, for sure.
And I think a couple of wrestlers, when Brock works with them, it tells the story. I think when he works with Kurt Angle, it told the story.
Yeah.
Big Show, John Cena, that, like, just him interacting with those guys kind of tells the story. But the other people on the list, I feel like they're better storytellers.
I hear you.
So, for number 4, it's kind of a curveball, but I put Jeff Jarrett.
Oh, yeah. I still
man.
hate Jeff Jarrett.
Yes. Like, the early days of TNA, me watching it, he was like the TNA Triple H to me. And only because it was like he was the authority figure, but he gave himself all the championship opportunities. He would just always have some way to win. Like, it was either somebody he hired to come interfere in the match or knock down the ref, and then, like, he'd do the whole Ric Flair thing a little bit.
Woo!
Yeah. And so, but he wasn't as cool as Ric Flair to me.
Hell no. It was a cornball.
He was a cornball, but he was so effective at, like, telling the story of the bad guy that he was number 4.
No, being a cornball worked into his advantage because it just made him more annoying. You're like, just get off the screen. You know?
He was the bad guy in TNA.
Respect.
Number 3, I'm giving it to Randy Orton.
It's a good one.
Because
St. Louis.
Right.
Yeah, St. Louis.
He
And if you ever see that dude in real life, he is fucking huge.
Yeah, he showed up to one of the GameStops out in St. Louis, and one of my old coworkers was like, yeah, I kept it cool and didn't announce to the store. Apparently Randy Orton noticed that, and after he bought his game, he's like, hey, thanks for keeping it quiet, and then walked out. I thought that was nice.
But Randy, he draws heat, man, and I think he only got better when he got, like, that legend killer gimmick. The way he manhandled Mick Foley. All the other older legends like Jake the Snake, Rowdy Piper. Even when he did the feud with... Anytime somebody feuds with Shawn Michaels,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I remember him feuding with Hogan and then like being into Hogan's daughter, that whole storyline. And then he did Legacy. I think that took him to another level.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and then like we just talked about him and Edge. I was like, man, Randy just knows how to do it, man. Number 2, I have to give it to Triple H.
It's a good one.
Because I feel like Triple H has played the bad guy. As long as I've known Triple H, I think he's played the bad guy. And I think, and he even knows it, like he's better in that role than he is as the face. In the later stages of his career, I think him as the face was just because of the situation or who he was working against.
Or when he came back from that quad injury and he was a monster face. He was like, everyone loved him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's easy baby face.
Oh, for sure.
Energy to get when you come back from an injury. I feel like that's easy energy.
Because I remember right after that, he and Shawn Michaels had that thing where they were best friends. Mm-hmm. Shawn Michaels had just come back from like this back surgery that he had, and nobody thought that he was going to be able to wrestle ever again. Yeah. And he came back and like he did one match and then another match, and it was this comeback tour. And then somewhere down the line, Triple H pedigreed his ass. Yeah. And I remember hating Triple H so much because he did that to Shawn Michaels, and Shawn Michaels is like one of my favorites of all time.
Yeah.
You know?
Definitely.
So yeah, he does it really well.
Even when he would like had Evolution and then like the whole thing with Randy. Randy's a really good heel. Like Randy is best as a heel, but when he was like the babyface who won the title and he thought like, oh, my mentors love me. Right. And then like Triple H, no.
Yeah. Gave him the thumbs down.
Thumbs down, beat the shit out of him. And then like he took the title the next pay-per-view. I was like, what the fuck? How you just gonna give it to Triple H? And I think that was my thing too growing up. Like it just seemed like the title just kept getting dropped on Triple H because he was that heel. Triple H is the guy. But number 1, I'm giving to my boy Chris Jericho because I think he's the best talker. He's the best at his gimmicks. He changes them every so often. He can put on a fucking match. That's important too.
Chris Jericho's great.
Chris Jericho is great.
The only thing I would say about Jericho is that something that we mentioned earlier on in the podcast is like for me now he transcends it so much that it's hard for me. Like even when he's playing a heel and he's doing these like really dastardly things, I just like can't be mad at him because I'm like, you're so fucking entertaining. You're so good at what you do. Yeah. You know, I have an appreciate like now, like a good heel right now. He's not on my list obviously because he's just starting out. But like the best heel I think in the wrestling business right now is MJF. Yeah. Max, you know, because he plays this young, snotty, fucking sarcastic douchebag, and you want to just punch him through the TV every time he talks.
But I think even Chris Jericho, like when they had their little interaction, it was like, you remind me of a young me. Yeah. And then that's my thing too, that like even Chris Jericho brought up with The Miz, who was also like at the top of his like heel game at one point. And Chris Jericho was like, you're wearing suits like me, you're talking like me, you borrow my finishing move. Like there's a lot of heels that follow like a Chris Jericho gimmick at some point. So I think that's why Chris Jericho's there. He's good, man.
Oh yeah, he is. So heels. Yeah. Mine's a little different because again, I'm older. I have to keep repeating that. But whatever. We love you, Steve. There's a little crossover though. Number 5, New Jack. He's not in WWE. He's ECW. Now, if anybody's currently they watch The Dark Side of the Ring. They did a whole episode about him and the shit that he used to do in the ring and the heat. When you're getting heat on yourself as a wrestler, it means that you're getting the audience to hate you. Yeah. You know? So you want that heat as a bad guy. And he got that heat because when he was first up, they would have him go in the South as a bad guy. And he would walk down the ring on the mic and he was so awesome on the mic. He'd call white people crackers, like all kinds of stuff. Right? And people would hate him. Like he needed like a buddy to walk with him as they were walking out of the arena because people would come and try and like assault him. But you also never wanted to fuck with New Jack because he like stabbed a dude in the ring one time.
Oh, I heard about that.
Yeah. There was this big inexperienced wrestler that came in. He tried to get his licks in on New Jack, you know, without like getting permission from New Jack while they were wrestling, and New Jack just took a shank out and like stabbed the dude like in the ring as part of like the match, and the dude just almost bled out in the ring.
Oh god.
And almost died, and then New Jack was charged later and stuff. So he lived the gimmick too. Like he was a bad guy in real life. So yeah, he's number 5.
Side note, like how much of the violent wrestling can you stand? Because I've seen some stuff like on YouTube where it's like these, what do they call it, like an ultra light bulb death match or a barbed wire.
I can't watch that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
When I was a younger wrestling fan, like in the 90s when like ECW came up and WCW came up, and you watched ECW like on I would record it and then watch it, or if I was up, I would watch it. I could watch only a little bit of the stuff that those guys would do, like New Jack would do. Like I was scared to watch New Jack fights.
They mentioned that in the Toys That Made Us. They just kept on, like, we just gotta make it bigger and bigger every time. So they would make cage. That's where cage matches came from. That's where the barbed wires come from. The ladders, everything.
But there's something different about a WWE like Hell in a Cell match compared to what like some of these dudes are doing like in open backyards, where it's like, here's a glass table, let's stack them on top of each other with some thumbtacks. And let's hit them with a light bulb. It's like, wow.
Yeah, I don't get that. Like, not a lot of that's like entertaining to me. Scary. Yeah, the stuff New Jack did in the ring wasn't necessarily entertaining. It was controversial.
Yeah.
When he was on the mic, if the job of a heel or bad guy is to elicit the response from the crowd where they are willing to kill you, you're probably doing your job too well. Like, be careful. Please be careful. But yeah, so that's number 5. Number 4, Triple H.
Yeah. So low on the
Trips. Meh. He's all right, though. At one point, it became that he was a heel because of the decisions being made in the back as opposed to him as a character. Does that make sense? Like putting the strap on him, giving him a title, over and over, and making those types of decisions. It's like it's a chicken or an egg situation. Did he become more heelish because he kept getting those opportunities? Or was he such a good heel that he was given the title?
He was the best heel for when you wanted your baby face to win in the right moment at the right event. Triple H was like, when Goldberg came in and they wanted him to get it, they were like, well, we're going to pair him with Triple H after The Rock left. Like, because there was nobody really who could draw like Triple H. I feel like Triple H was really good at drawing heel heat.
I feel like he was a better heel after he stopped wrestling. When he was more of the authority figure, like that's when I hated him more than I hated him when he was a wrestler. When Triple H and The Rock had their like thing back in the day, it wasn't that I hated Triple H. It was just like I love The Rock.
Yeah.
And that was, for me, that's what like made it me a good heel. Like, was I watching because I wanted to watch the heel lose? Or was I watching because I wanted to watch the face win? And that's why Brock Lesnar is such a great heel, because when he wrestled, you were watching to see him lose. Yeah. Right? I didn't give a shit about the face for the most part. I just wanted to watch Brock Lesnar get his ass kicked by somebody because he was just mowing through everybody. Yeah. So they just built him as this monster heel. So that's kind of where the difference is for me with Triple H. For me, I feel like him as a character on by itself. Yeah. He was a good heel. He just wasn't like my type of heel. Maybe. Okay. Maybe it's a little bit more extra bias than that. So number 3 is Roddy Piper.
Yeah.
For me, the original heel, honestly.
Yeah.
Could make you hate him on the mic in these beautifully campy epic movies on the side too that just like added to his persona. But he just had this mouth on him and he wasn't afraid to say anything, or offend anybody. Yeah. And I don't know, I just loved the way that he could cut a promo. Give a shit about his wrestling prowess. I was just like, he's entertaining as shit. Yeah. He says some outlandish stuff, and he's just really good on the mic.
He's one of those heels where, like, he was the top heel, but, like, they never... I don't know if, like, they ever really believed in him as the, like, the person who's going to carry the company here, have this title belt.
No. You know what? Why that is? Because, okay, there would be no Hulk Hogan if there wasn't Roddy Piper.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Hulk Hogan wouldn't be where he is without his villains.
And WWF at the time was more of a face company, right? Yeah. Where like the good guy was the thing. So they would never put the strap on a bad guy like the NWA did with Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Right? Like Ric Flair was, everyone hated Ric Flair. And so they would put the strap on him because, again, it was like with Brock Lesnar, people came to watch him lose. And he lost 16 times, That's why he's the 16-time champ. So for me, that's why Roddy Piper is so powerful. He never got that push.
Yeah.
That he probably could have done really well as a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just different back then. If you have a Hulk Hogan, you're not going to put the belt on Roddy Piper, Number 2, Vince McMahon. In real life and in storyline. Vince McMahon, there would not be a Stone Cold without Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
If Vince McMahon didn't give them the go-ahead to be like, all right, you're going to beat the shit out of me every so often. And we're just going to make this go because they tapped into something that everybody feels. We're like, yeah, I just hate my boss. And every once in a while, I'd like to stun him, So he was so good because he was just that Monty Burns from The Simpsons, type villain where he's got this he's Scrooge McDuck with all this money and I'm just going to use my money and power to manipulate you and gaslight you. He's fucking Donald Trump, basically.
Yeah, and he had him on the road.
And he's also a WWE Hall of Famer. Shout out to our president. Or that, or not my president, whatever. We don't have to. We don't even have to talk about him. Fuck him. Anyway, so Vince McMahon's number 2. And number 1 for me, and I will admit this is kind of biased, but it's Iron Sheik. Dude got so much heat back in the day. People hated him, and he's brown, so he's my number 1.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah, man.
I think during 9/11-ish kind of time, they brought in that character where it was
Muhammad Hassan.
Yeah. Where I think if Iron Sheik was in that time period, he would have really thrived as a heel. He would have got so much heat.
Oh my god!
He might have actually got the death threats that you were talking about, New Jack.
He got him back in the day. I mean, because Iron Sheik, people hated him because they were, they had this jingoistic, America, America, rah 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 thing going on. Yeah. So, it was the original Gulf War. And even before that for Iron Sheik. People just hated brown people too,
That's a given, buddy.
When you're wrestling and wrestling's really popular in the South, that's something that you can go for. And he also, Sergeant Slaughter was this American hero that was also a wrestler too. And he made Sergeant Slaughter turn on America, and people hated Iron Sheik. But now he's so popular on Twitter. Because all he does is he'll just write in caps. He's always yelling, and you just say "I'll break your back, Bubba," over and over again.
And he always signs it "Long live the legend," too.
Which then he says, "Go fuck yourself."
He's just so good on Twitter. But yeah, that's my list.
All right. So faces number 5. I am going with. Before I said this list was harder to do because I really had to think about it. Number 5, I went with Jeff Hardy. Yes. And the reason I went with Jeff is because I don't think he's ever succeeded as a heel. I know in Impact TNA he tried it. I don't think he ever really succeeded because I think there are 2 things that work for Jeff as a good guy. And that was 1, the look for the baby faces like him. I think he appeals to women.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the women care about him. I think his ability and his rebel attitude and his size wasn't the bigger guy, and I think that appealed to male fans in a way. So I think he gets a lot of the underdog face energy.
Yeah, I remember he had that one ladder match against The Undertaker when The Undertaker was the American Badass. Mm-hmm. And the crowd was hot for him to win that night. And this was, again, when The Undertaker was kind of a face. He was a big deal, Mm-hmm. And I remember watching that episode and being like, I kind of hope he wins. Yeah, so I get it. He's Daredevil and doing all this crazy shit.
He was initially, before we got all the guys we got today, he was doing really crazy shit that you're holy shit. I think now you find it guys who can do that and who are willing to put their bodies on the line like that, you don't put them at the heel because if somebody's going to jump off the ladder, I'm going to cheer for you. You can't I'm not about to boo you.
Yeah.
And then even his jumps at WrestleMania was
From 50, 60 feet up in the air.
Exactly. It's like, you're fucking crazy. I love you.
Yes.
So.
That's a great one.
Jeff's at number 5. Number 4, I put The Undertaker.
Yeah.
Because, at least for me, when I was watching The Undertaker, he was always the good guy and he would fight the nastiest of heels.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, and I know Brock broke it, but for a long time, he just did not lose at WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
He would fight everybody and he would beat everybody. I was about to put him in that like category where he transcends heels and faces a little bit. I mean, I know he was a heel, but I think his career as a face was bigger. I could be wrong.
No, I agree. Because when he was a heel, he was part of the corporate ministry or whatever. Yeah. Right? Or he was a heel when he first came up, and then people just were like, holy shit, he's huge. Mm-hmm. He's kind of mysterious. People fell into the gimmick.
Yeah.
And then in the last 20 years, he's a legend. Right? Mm-hmm. So you have to cheer for him. So yeah, I get that one for sure.
Number 3, I go with Shawn Michaels. Shawn is so good at like selling moves from other people and just selling a beating. You're really invested in Shawn and like, damn, was he okay after the Triple H attack?
Yeah.
Was he okay after when Chris Jericho slammed his head into the screen? Even like, I think this was like the turning point in John Cena's career was when John Cena and Shawn Michaels were about to have that match at WrestleMania. Because like before, I felt like we were all team John Cena. Like they were still getting the cheers. Like people still loved him. But then it was like, can Cena beat Shawn Michaels?
Yeah.
And then, like, I feel like people like started to think about that and they're like, there's no way. Like Shawn needs to go over. And then Shawn didn't go over. Yeah. Even though he was playing the bad guy. Like, leading up into that match.
People love him, man.
Yeah, people love Shawn Michaels. I love Shawn Michaels. I think he's one of my top 5 of all times. I definitely think he's one of the best baby faces I've seen. I know he's played the heel in the past. And that was, like, earlier in his career.
Yeah, but even then, like, I remember watching him as a heel growing up, and I never thought that he was a bad guy. I was like, no, he's cool as shit. Yeah. He sang his own theme song. Yeah. Every single woman in the crowd loved him, right? And he was the antithesis of Bret Hart. Like, I love Bret Hart, don't get me wrong. Bret Hart was boring. Like, he was like watching paint dry. You know, and Shawn Michaels had this gift of the gab. Like, he could just cut you down with all these words, especially with his work in DX.
Yeah.
He was so good in DX, and he was supposed to be a bad guy, but he was just so fucking entertaining because he was just so lewd. And, like, he would say stuff that you shouldn't, you know, he got away with saying a lot of outlandish shit on TV. So, I mean, he's always been great, even when he's a bad guy.
Okay. So. Yeah. And he put on great matches. He can back up.
Oh, for sure.
He has, like, a lot of highlights. And then, like, even his super kick is, like, I would say one of the top moves in wrestling history. Yeah, like, where it's, like, everybody knows what a super kick is. So, number 2, I put Thing. Watching him in WCW, he was that good guy. He was that mysterious figure. A lot of ways, he was kind of like WCW's Undertaker. He had the mysteriousness to him. But he was really cool. He was good on the mic. He was good in the ring. Even when he went to TNA, I think there was a couple times he tried to play the heel. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it didn't work. Like when he did the Main Event Mafia.
Yeah.
To me, I don't think that worked. His character, it only works as a good guy. When he went to WWE, they put him with Seth Rollins. Huge reaction for, you know, hoping that Thing was going to win that match. Even though I felt like I knew he wasn't going to win the WWE title. Even when he like came and he fought Triple H at WrestleMania, I wanted Thing to go over Triple H, but he didn't get it. And that was another moment where I was like, this makes Triple H a good heel in a way, because it's like he took that moment away from me where I would have seen Thing win a WrestleMania match. And they had like DX and NWO get involved too.
The way they built the Crow version of Sting was so cool too. And then NWO came in and Hulk Hogan turned into this, you know, monster heel. And everyone fucking hated him. And Sting was like what WCW stood for, right? Mm-hmm. And Hulk Hogan was this WWF transplant coming in, and like he was a bad guy and took over WCW. And they built Sting slowly. Like you would see him in the rafters like one time and you just saw his face. And then it was over like a year period where he finally came back, had that match with Hogan at like StarCast or whatever, and won the title. Spoiler alert. And
we're the spoiled podcast.
And that was such a cool moment because he like tapped into this comic book kind of.
Yeah, that's another thing. He was a comic book character,
right?
And it's like certain characters, and I think they even alluded to it today. Like those type of characters don't really work anymore,
right?
Like Bray Wyatt is getting away with it, but
he's so creative,
right? But I feel like they can't do too many of them. Thing, Undertaker, Bray Wyatt, Kane, like those characters can get away with it. And so number one, I know this might kill Kerwin, but number one babyface all time is John Cena.
Oh no, yeah.
I mean,
I agree with that. Even with the reaction he gets. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, but he never, like, he came in as the, like, this really, like, generic babyface, and then he got the rapper gimmick. He was a heel.
The doctor of thugonomics.
I forgot.
He's
so offensive.
I do think that he had maybe a little more charisma during that time than he did when he kind of like became the Superman gimmick.
Yeah.
But I just admired, I guess, how he never changed his character, even though it was like that split reaction. And he just always played the good guy through it. Like, there was nobody you can put him against that he wasn't about to be like, go back to the rapper gimmick, use underhanded tactics. I think the only glimpse we got of it was against Brock, but like when Brock came back and like F5'd him, and then they had the Extreme Rules match, and he like bust out the old chain back from his like rapper days. And then like even with Dwayne The Rock Johnson, like he like bust out that gimmick a little bit, but he just never changed his character.
No, as a character, he's a like red meat babyface, right? Never wavered, never did anything underhanded. Went like later on in his career, like what it is now. But yeah, I think it's because he didn't have the edge. That's the reason why people didn't love him. I think people respect him now and love him universally, maybe, and they like playfully will boo him, you know?
Yeah, I think now it's like a lot how like Kurt Angle was when he got the "you suck."
Yeah.
It's like, you get it, it then flips. Like, so when he's the bad guy, no, they mean you suck.
Right.
But then, like, when he's the good guy, they can change it to he telling his opponent they suck.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
That's a good
number one.
Good list, man.
Cool. All right.
So my faces. Number 5, I have Dusty Rhodes. Again, showing my age a little bit. But he, magic on the mic.
Yeah.
Big, fat dude with the, you know, this unbelievable Southern accent and lisp that made him so unique, which is so cool, I thought, too. And people loved him because he, like, represented this blue-collar fighter from underneath, and he was always against Ric Flair. Now, I would have put Ric Flair on my heel list. This is just to harken back to someone else, but he was just right off my top 5 because he transcends it at this point.
I think so, too. I think especially, like, the later WWE career for me, because it was like you knew he was going to lose because he was, like, so old, and they were just using him against guys, and then you were just waiting for him to do his, like, legendary drop in the ring, or to be, like, find something to do.
Or something. Yeah.
Even if you don't watch wrestling, you know Ric Flair.
He's transcended everything.
The woo is everywhere. Woo, woo, woo.
Hell yeah, dude. But anyway, so that's all to say. Like, back in the day, Ric Flair was, like, hated, you know, because he was just this pompous asshole, and Dusty Rhodes was this blue-collar fighter. So that's number 5 for me. I have Shawn Michaels at number 4. So I agree. Growing up, love Shawn Michaels. We talked about it already. He's awesome. Number 3, I have Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
Now, Daniel Bryan, that run he had running up to WrestleMania 30 was incredible because nobody in the back, like in the office, wanted him to be WWE champion. People loved him because he was an underdog. He was tiny. People didn't give him a chance. People knew, too, like how good of a wrestler he was. And it was just like another like grassroots, like organic thing that started where the people, like dictated the storyline. So his story became like one of like overcoming all of these odds, and then he finally won. And like no one ever boos him until, because he's so talented, he became this heel fairly recently, and everyone hated him because he was talking about the environment and like was kind of like real condescending about it and everything. But so it was brilliant by him.
I noticed like how fans will turn if like you make the title worse than the original.
Yes.
I mean,
this wooden title made out of hemp.
We're just like, what's going on? And he's telling people how to, that's another way. And I think it's kind of like a cheap way to get heel heat, but when you tell people how to live their lives. So,
they hate that shit.
Yeah, you can't do that. But I was just going to say, like, with Daniel Bryan, I was trying to remember the moment when he, like, for me, it was like, I like Daniel Bryan. I liked him in ROH. I liked him coming in. And I was like, okay, I can be okay with him being like that guy who's always the United States champion. Like, I don't need him to be the world heavyweight champion. But I was trying to figure out what was the point where I did start to care and be like, okay, he needs the world title. Because I was trying to think back to the moment. Because you were talking about his WrestleMania 30 run. I was trying to think of when that started. Oh, like, was it Team Hell No?
Team Hell No. And how it was him and Kane, who was Undertaker's brother.
I remember Kane.
And so they had this thing going on where they were forced to become a tag team. And they hated each other. So then they were forced to go to therapy. Yeah. On this storyline. And then they find out like they like are a really good wrestling like tag team together. So they start working behind the scenes in therapy, and they're starting to win these matches. And that's when like their popularity started to grow. And so that, I think it bridged off of that. And then it grew for me when they were doing the unification of the titles. Like they had 2 world heavyweight titles, and it was Cena versus Orton or something like that to unify it. And on the unifying show, the crowd, they were in Seattle, which is his hometown, and they started cheering for Daniel Bryan. Like they were trying to talk in the ring, and the whole crowd, they were yelling so loudly that like you couldn't hear what they were saying on the mic. So they just had to stop and like let the crowd take over the show because they were so behind Daniel Bryan. And they were like, nah, we don't want to give a shit. We don't give a shit about Cena and Orton right now. Like we want Daniel Bryan. And that for me, that was like, oh, okay, they have something really amazing here. So that was number 3. Number 2 is The Rock.
Yeah.
And,
right?
you know,
yeah.
He transcends everything. I mean, he came out originally this 3rd generation wrestler. His father and his grandfather were both wrestlers in the WWE.
His daughter is just signing up too.
Yeah, she's in NXT now. And he started off this, like, you know, they brought him out this baby face, and people fucking hated him because it was different, right? We're like, oh no, you were handed this shit, we hate you. So then he was a heel, and a monster heel for a while. So good on the mic. Then they started to love him because he was so good as a heel. And that's when it just skyrocketed. And now, like, if he shows up at a show, they love him, you know? So that's number 2. And number 1 of all time, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
You can't deny it.
And he's, you know, he was the one good guy. Other than Shawn Michaels, he was the good guy that did bad guy shit. Yeah. And people loved him for it. You know, he poured cement in Vince McMahon's Corvette. Yeah. You know, he doused them with beer from a beer truck. He like slashed his tires. He hit him with a bedpan over his head and shoves, you know, like a wand up his butt, or you know, it was assumed that's what happened. They didn't actually do that on live TV. But I mean, he was just amazing. And now, if he comes out, you hear that glass breaking. It's like, holy shit, he's here. You know,
and you're waiting to see who he thunders.
Yep.
And I think a lot for Stone Cold, it was like he was the persona of the people everybody said watch pro wrestling. They were like pro wrestling for rednecks. Yes. And it was like he had the redneck gimmick. Right. So I think he just had that persona that really drove him over the edge. But yeah, he's definitely a legend.
I feel like it started off like that, but then people realized how much of a badass he was that it transcended it too. But yeah, for sure, he appealed to that, you know, like what these hillbillies think that they are. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I think I'm that badass. You know, like that's their, be like, yeah, I'm like Stone Cold. I'm like, yeah, you know, you're not. You're not like him. So yeah, I think that's what appealed to the crowd. So that's my list.
Cool. So my perspective is going to be interesting because mine's a lot of like secondhand and just like all over the place. I don't even know if you can call me a fan of wrestling, but I'm just kind of like a fan's younger brother that occasionally saw things about wrestling. So I'll start with the heels. They were so hard to number that I was going to say them. So my top 5 heels. Obviously, you guys have definitely talked about him, Triple H.
Yeah.
Why? Because I saw him in Blade. You
saw him in Blade.
I saw him in the third Blade. Like, the guy was huge. And this was the moment that I realized wrestlers are ginormous, and they have genetics that just make them huge. And that is astounding.
Man.
That's all I got for him.
And wait till you see what he do in the ring.
And it's nice to hear that he's still in the business. He always had the trademark tighty whities and long hair, and I loved that. He pulled it off. And then the one right after him is Roddy Piper. Yeah. He was unforgettable. Fun name to say. I mean, what's wrong with that? RRP. Like, that's great. And he was in an episode of Highlander. He played a bad guy, and he killed it. I would just want to say that. He did a great job as that.
Everyone listening to this podcast, after this podcast, of course, don't stop right now, but after this podcast, you have to watch the movie They Live. Roddy Piper is in it. It's an amazing movie. It's an American classic. It's
timely.
And it's full of one-liners that you should say almost every day to people.
And there's a fight that happens for no other reason. The fact that they just don't like each other.
Just no reason at all.
Yeah. Also, he was a good friend of Ronda Rousey, which I thought was cool. And she, in fact, was given liberty to use the name Rowdy Rousey. Okay, cool. And then this is just one guy that has to be on my list no matter what. Because he was unforgettable in the N64 games. Mr. Ass.
Yeah.
Because number one,
I'm an ass man.
That's right. How can you not have that?
It was like a tie between him and Val Venis. Who was like more controversial in the game.
So Mr. Ass, I mean, like whenever you would play him in the game, and you needed to gain more support, more rallying, because there wasn't health bars, but there were like ways
taunt
bars, and you'd move the joystick because you had to use the D-pad to actually move your character. So it's a different thing here. And then he would just pull his pants down and it would just blur out. And I thought that was hysterical. Apparently his real name wasn't wrestler enough. Billy Gunn apparently couldn't have been a wrestling name. I don't understand that.
It was a wrestling name.
But was it later on?
No, it was early on.
It was early on.
He was the badass Billy Gunn, and that just turned into Mr. Ass.
Into Mr. Ass.
Well, it was like kind of his nickname. Yeah, he was in DX, dude. Like, he was a big deal. Man.
Okay, well, you know, whatever makes him happy.
He was really talented. He's still wrestling now.
Is he really?
Yeah, he got his son.
I think he's like a backstage guy with AEW too. Like he wrestles as well, but yeah.
I'm glad to hear he's still, you know, farting around and everything. Of course, I'm glad Mr. Ass is still farting around. I'm happy. But Shawn Michaels definitely has to be on there. Number 1, flowing hair.
Yeah,
can't miss it.
So this is just like your list of like your favorite wrestlers.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then the firework entrance with where he just brings his arms down and goes off to one side.
I've done that before.
Oh, not before. Yeah. You've done it many times in your childhood.
I taught my son to do that.
I'm sure you did.
Have a picture of it.
Oh, is that the one with him and Frankie?
I mean, Frankie's in the background. She's not really in the picture, but
right. The pants. The pants were flaming and red, and I love them. Jokes aside, super athletic. I remember being floored about what he could do as a child. Yeah. So then my last heel would be the Giant, or also known as the Big Show, because no matter what he did, whenever you came in, you're like, well, here comes the Big Show. And I never forgot that.
That's like a meme now.
Yeah.
Like, you know the Big Show was in the Big Show.
Also, fun facts about him. He was in a very underrated show on USA Network called Royal Pains. He played a minor character there.
Big Show.
That's right. And then he was also in an episode of Cousin Skeeter, where Skeeter needed to help Bobby learn how to defend himself against a school bully. And he's like, why not get the Giant? Because this was pre-Big Show.
Did you know he was in Waterboy?
I do know. He was Captain Insano in Waterboy. I forgot about that.
I have to think of like, oh shit, that he was into.
We can pull up the IP page later. All right, then my top faces. So, interesting. I was surprised that a lot of mine showed up in your conversations.
I just wanted to say real quick about the Big Show. The fact that he first came out as like Andre the Giant's son was so cool because I was a big Andre fan because of Princess Bride.
And he had the leotard.
Does anybody want a peanut?
He said it feels so nice, I could keep it.
If not, you'll be dead.
So then my top faces are going to be... we'll start off with the Hardy brothers. Because those guys were acrobatic as hell. Especially in the N64 game. You go up and press A against the ropes and they would just flip off like they were flying all over the place. Also, they shared the last name of a book series that I never read, but I fully respected.
The Hardy Brothers.
The Hardy Brothers.
I read those.
I did not.
No.
But I saw them, and I was like, those look like good books.
They're really cool.
I have to exclude Matt, like, instead of doing them together. Because Matt came back and he had, like, the version 1 gimmick. I feel like that was a good heel gimmick.
Yo, he's so creative.
Yeah.
The stuff he's doing that he's done with, like, Broken Matt Hardy and everything is...
Yeah.
I don't know if you can... Go check that stuff on YouTube. It's hilarious.
He actually was a history and art fan. Like I think he studied history and art when he was in school. He's actually
you can tell when like the stuff that he films, man.
I wouldn't be surprised, like, back in the day with that version 1 gimmick. Like, when he came out, he had, like, this special, like, intro screen.
Oh, yeah?
And it would be, like, random facts about Matt Hardy. It'd
Right.
be like, Matt Hardy doesn't eat cheese or something stupid like that.
I have that in common. It's amazing. Sting, because he looked like he was a member of KISS and always brought a baseball bat to the ring.
The Kiss Demon in
That's right.
WCW.
And also the Crow. So
Brandon Lee.
I thought that was odd. Like what are you gonna do to a guy who's like 6 foot whatever and he carries a bat? I'm gonna be like, would you like a burger?
And he never talked.
When he was that version of Sting,
Yeah.
like very rarely would he say anything, which was another cool thing.
Commercial he talks or something like that.
Oh.
Probably later on, but
Okay, not early.
Do you guys remember the movie Ready to Rumble?
yes,
Vaguely.
so good with David Arquette
Yeah.
and Scott Conn.
When they're fighting in the store and everything? Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, that's a classic.
Yes.
That's a cult classic. Let's put it that way.
So then after him would be The Rock, because quite frankly, he's just been transcended wrestling.
Yeah.
After him, I remember I was watching Conan, and actually the Big Show was on there. And he was talking about how The Rock had become so successful, but every time they went out after a show, everyone was like, oh, let's go drinking. And The Rock's like, why don't we just go karaokeing? And everyone was like, why are we going to do that? But I decided not to question that anymore because The Rock became super famous. And Conan was like, that's a good point to go for. Regardless. So then Stone Cold Steve Austin has to be on there. Because anywhere you go, the moment you hear that crash of his intro music, you know that you're about to meet one of the baddest men in wrestling. He always pulled off the vest. I gotta say that. Had the double beard trick. I remember him being just vicious always in the ring. And then I find out he's a face, and I'm like, why? But that fits into the whole wrestling dynamic. And then I have to say that this was my ultimate favorite because he was small like myself. Rey Mysterio. Acrobatic as hell. Acrobatic as hell, a luchador.
Just unbelievable. And when you saw him too, like he was kind of like at the tail end of his prime.
Okay.
You know, like early Rey Mysterio, the stuff he had early on in WCW,
Yeah.
or even in ECW. Amazing shit. Like well before his time, you know? He's unbelievable. So yeah, check that shit on YouTube too.
Does he still carry on the mantle? Or is it the same guy when it was Rey Mysterio? Because I heard he's still in the game. Is that true?
Yeah, he just had a match recently.
Okay.
I think he's done with the WWE now.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
he's still wrestling. His son's wrestling now too. Dominic, way bigger than him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dominic looks like his dad. Yeah, and that's a good list of wrestlers. Interesting list. Mr. Ass.
Billy Gunn.
Billy
Has
Gunn
to
would
be on
thank
there.
you.
The Road Dogg Jesse James. You didn't want him?
I forgot about Jesse James.
No, the Road Dogg. Yeah, well, yeah. Oh, you didn't know?
That's right. I forgot.
Your ass better call somebody.
Well, because you always played as him too, and I got tired of the music. Mr. Ass was unforgettable.
Yeah, man.
Pull down your pants in a wrestling match.
That was such a good wrestling.
That didn't really help with, like, you know, the stereotypes that wrestling was gay. So,
Yeah,
You know.
true. Whoops.
but, you know.
The amount of, like, shit that wrestling fans take,
Yeah.
you know? It's just like, leave us alone. Why do you watch Game of Thrones?
Yes.
Yeah.
This our shit's live. That's it.
It's a different.
It's difficult. It's live theater with storylines, and it just happens to have acrobatics in it as well.
It's a different form of entertainment, and only what you see is the roids and the rage, when there's so much more to that.
Yeah.
And it's an unfair thing to even say there's roids and rage, but it's the same thing when people talk about video games. Like, oh, you wish... I'm like, didn't you waste 10 hours watching Game of Thrones? And you're yelling at me for playing video games?
Oh, didn't Rogan said that was a waste of time or something like that.
Rogan says a lot of things.
Yeah. Eat elk.
This has been great. Thank you for coming, Kyle.
For sure. I hope I'm invited back.
And yeah, please do. Please do.
It's about the only intersection of like nerddom though that I have. You know what I mean? Or video games too, to an extent. Old video games. But you want to talk wrestling? I'll come anytime. You want to talk about movies? I'll be here.
That's right. He is a cinephile. Yeah, he's quite good.
That always sounds really weird when you say it. I know what it means. No, I don't. Yes, I have sex with film.
Well, if it makes you happy.
Hey man, I don't kink shame on this. You know,
there will be no kink shaming on this show.
But yeah, I love movies. So
yeah, and he's damn good at them too. That has been a wrap for our episode this time. I'm Kunal Bajwa.
Lance Jordan.
Curran Bajwa.
And thank you for joining us. We will find a hobby one day.
That's how you sign off. That's cool.
Hey fan peeps, thanks for joining, and as always, we appreciate any feedback. You can follow us on our Facebook page, They Need a Hobby, and also at tnahpod on Instagram and Twitter.
Hopefully one day we'll find a hobby and maybe even be one of the cool kids. Peace.
You're fired.
I can be fired.
Your face is literally on the podcast.
They did.